So, broadly speaking, there are five traditional or main branches of philosophy, as we conceive of it stemming out of the Greek tradition, right, which later became more broadly the European tradition of philosophy, versus, say, like India, the subcontinent, or China or Japan, right? There are different conceptions and different words for philosophy in those languages, right? Um, with similar general goals. For example, in India, philosophy is called darshana, which means true sight, right? Proper sight. And the idea is that through correct thinking, you can come to see the world as it really is, and that tells you things like how you should act and whatnot. Very similar to the idea of, um, it being the love of wisdom. Anyway, that aside, forewarning, I tend to go off on like sidebars and tangents and whatnot to give kind of a more full experience um, and explanation. But just warning, some of the information, it's not going to be irrelevant, but it is going to be tangential to whatever topic we might have been on at the time. Uh, to your benefit. Okay, but anyway, once again, the five traditional or main branches of philosophy are metaphysics, epistemology, aesthetics, ethics, and logic. Right? Now, in this course, we'll be going over four of those, the first four in detail, and we'll do a very brief overview of some of the importance of logic. But we won't be studying logic much directly. Right? The study of logic in this course is going to be indirect through the argumentation, through the arguments of others, of other philosophers. Right? Um, I say other because I'm not including my own arguments in here. Um, not that I'm notable enough to be in an introductory course, other than as a teacher. Right? So these five branches are metaphysics, which is the study of reality, right? And it was named after a work of Aristotle's. Aristotle's one of the major philosophers that we'll spend some time discussing. In fact, pretty much all of Module 4 of the fourth module is on Aristotle. And it means, it's a combination of the words meta, meaning after or beyond, and physica, meaning natural things or the natural order, right? Or just nature, right? So it's beyond nature, right? So when you make religious arguments, what you're doing is you're making a metaphysical argument. You're proposing a metaphysical framework. And some of the central questions of metaphysics include things like what is real, what is unreal, um, are are there things that does reality admit of degrees, or is everything either just binarily real or unreal? Um, and so, in a sense, the goal of metaphysics is to distinguish between what's apparently the case and what's truly the case. Right? Uh, Something that science has picked up in, the last, really only in the last 250 years of formal science has been geared in this way. For the longest time, science was bound up with philosophy, and we called, until the 1800s, mid 17 to early 1800s, I believe, scientists were called natural philosophers, right? Because they philosophized about nature, right? And they were practicing metaphysics, just in a very specific way. So, in a real way, metaphysics, excuse me, is about distinguishing between what's apparently the case and what's truly the case, right? And again, going back to science, right? It appears to be that this is a bottle, right? That this is solid. It's made of metal, right? But what we know to be the case, because of science, right? And I'll put "no" kind of in air quotes there, right? Is that that's a lot of empty space. There's a lot of It's more empty space than it is, connected space because of the electromagnetic repulsion between electrons and other atoms, right? It's the thing that keeps it from, going boom anytime I flick it with my finger and, killing us all, or at least roughly 3 miles away from where I'm at, roughly 3 mile radius of where I'm at. One subcategory or sub-branch of metaphysics is called ontology. And ontology is the study of being, right? Or as I call it, the study of is. And it looks and tries to divide things into 3 categories. What is necessary, what must be, right? What is, possible, what can be, and what is impossible, or what cannot be. And it's important to note that cannot in this sense isn't the same as can't, right? It's one word, cannot, right? And that's an important logical and grammatical distinction, because cannot as one word means that it is in fact impossible, right? It excludes possibility altogether. Whereas cannot, as 2 words, is saying that it is possible for it not to be this way, which means also that it's equally possible for it to be this way. When you say, I can't do this, right, you're saying that it's possible, just not presently something you can actualize. Right? When you say, I cannot do this, right, you're saying it's just impossible, right? Flat out impossible, right? Good difference. I can't lift 350 pounds, or bench press 350 pounds. I can't, right? It's fully within the realm of possibility, but it's not something that I can do presently, right now. And, there might be a time if I spend years bodybuilding that I can do that. But not right now. Possible, but not presently within my capabilities. Versus, I cannot fly under my own power. Right? I'm not Superman. It's just physically impossible, to the best of my knowledge. I'm also not going to jump out of my 2nd-story window to see if I can, though. Right? Okay, so that's metaphysics. The next branch is epistemology. And epistemology is the study of knowledge. Right? And some of the central questions of epistemology include, what is knowledge? What can we know? How can we know? And there's an important distinction, again, between those last 2 questions, right? What can we know asks if there is a limit to our knowledge, right? Is it possible for us to know things outside the bounds of our senses? Is it possible for us to know every conceivable thing? Or are there some things that we just cannot know, some truths that are inaccessible to us? Whereas the question of how can we know asks whether or not all sources of knowledge, right, or the various things that we can be known in the same way through different means. Or if knowing them through different means produces different forms of knowledge, right? Different kinds of knowledge with different minimum criteria to say that we know via this mean. Right? For example, seeing a car accident versus having me tell you that there was a car accident at, the corner of Kirkendall and Research Forest. Right? Those are 2. The knowledge is the same in the factual sense, but is there something that's fundamentally different between you knowing through my testimonially telling you and my knowing through seeing the accident? Right? Okay, so I'm going to stop this video here, and then we'll have a second one for the other 3 branches.